I know what you might be thinking. Alex, why didn't you go for Godzilla vs. Gigan? Well, I wanted to take a little detour and review some childhood classics. Well, most of our childhood classics, The Dark Crystal and a couple others I haven't seen. But we're starting off with The Muppet Movie, a childhood classic of mine, released in 1979. And I gotta say, it's pretty good. So we start out with the Muppet resident Grumps, Waldorf, played by Jim Henson, and Statler, played by Richard Hunt, going to heckle a Muppet movie. Oh, and by the way, this is a movie within a movie. We start out in a Floridian swamp where Kermit the Frog, another Jim Henson character, sings his heart out on a banjo, when all of a sudden, an agent named Bernie, played by Dom DeLuise, gives him an offer to go to Hollywood. He thinks about it for a minute, but eventually accepts the offer. After showing some technical feats of Kermit riding a bike without the hand going up the ass, we then see an advertisement for Doc Hopper's fried frog legs, and Kermit is disgusted by it. That night at the El Cecil Cafe, Kermit sees the owner, played by James Coburn, get frickin' yeeted. Then, after running into a patron, played by Madeline Kahn, a precursor to Beetlejuice, Myth, played by Carol Kane, and the pianist, played by the film's composer, Paul Williams, we see Fozzie, played by Frank Oz, unsuccessfully tell some jokes. They eventually outsmart the patrons by saying that there are drinks on the house, and they take that way too literally. Unfortunately, before the two can leave in Fozzie's Uncle Studebaker, Doc Hopper, played by Charles Durning, tries to convince Kermit to be a salesperson for his frog legs, or rather a sales frog, but either way, Kermit refuses and leaves with Fozzie, so he sends out his minion, Max, played by Austin Pendleton, to go after him. The next morning, the two set off to Hollywood, where they encounter Big Bird, played by Carol Spinney. However, they eventually get tired and crash at Old Church, run by Dr. Teeth in the Electric Mayhem. Oh, and do you want to know their names? No? Too bad. We got Dr. Teeth, the leader and pianist, played by Jim Henson, Zoot, the saxophonist, played by Dave Goelz, Animal, the drummer, played by Frank Oz, Janice, the guitarist, played by Richard Hunt, and Floyd, played by Jerry Nelson, the bassist. And we can't forget about the manager, Scooter, also played by Richard Hunt. Anyway, after that fiasco, Fozzie gives the band the screenplay, and they eventually disguise the car in a different paint, which, coincidentally, happens to fit with the billboard nearby. Hilariously, Gonzo, a stunt animal, whatever you want to call him, played by Dave Goelz, and his chicken girlfriend, Camilla, played by Jerry Nelson, crash into the Studebaker, and the car goes upside down. They eventually trade the Studebaker for another car, and they eventually go to a Bogan County Fair. And guess who wins? Seriously, guess who wins? If you guess Miss Piggy, another Frank Oz character, you'd be correct. And when she sees Kermit, she is starstruck. A little while later, Gonzo takes Camilla to the Balloon Man, played by Richard Pryor, aka Slim from the Mac, who gives her all the balloons, and Gonzo starts flying. Doc Hopper shoots Gonzo, thinking he was Kermit, and the car which Fozzie's driving crashes into a billboard, saying the pie that the billboard is holding straight at Doc Hopper's car. Kermit and Piggy then have a quiet dinner when all of a sudden, the waiter, played by Steve Martin, calls Piggy over for a phone call. Let's just say she doesn't make it back. So, Kermit meets up with a dude named Rolf, also played by Jim Henson, and they sing a little song together. Doc Hopper then makes associations with a mad doctor named Craftsman, played by Mel Brooks, who then tries to fry Kermit's brains into doing whatever he wants. Piggy then turns into a badass and quite literally pork chops everybody, including Craftsman. However, Piggy leaves once again and the film stops rolling. Don't worry, the film's back up running again, but unfortunately, we run into a dude named Snake, played by Scott Walker, who basically is hired by Doc Hopper to kill Kermit now. Unfortunately for the gang, who has added Rolf and had Miss Piggy rejoin, the car has troubles, so they're forced to spend the night out in the desert. Kermit starts blaming himself for everything, but after some advice from himself essentially, he's convinced to keep going. The Electric Mayhem arrives and picks him up the next morning, when all of a sudden they're followed by a cop, which is really just Max, trying to warn everyone about Doc Hopper. They stop at a ghost town. They're met by Bunsen Honeydew, played by Dave Goelz, and Beaker, played by Richard Hunt, who has somehow made a new invention, the Instagrow pills. Elmo goes inside and eats them all, while Kermit has a final showdown with Hopper. Elmo grows to the size of a giant kaiju and scares him off. Once they reach the studio, they're met with a secretary, played by Cloris Reachman, who is somehow allergic to animal hair, and she's eventually forced to let him in. They then meet Lord Lou Grade himself, played by Orson Welles, who eventually signs a contract with them, and they eventually start making a set, but it gets destroyed when Gazzo knocks it over. However, they look at the hole in the sky, and they sing one final verse of a song, with over 250 Muppets, before Sweetums, played by Richard Hunt, rips through the screen of the movie. It's got some good heartfelt moments, the puppets look amazing, and the story's pretty good too. Overall, I give this one a 10 out of 10. Go check it out if you can, it's pretty good.